So we're going to begin here with a short meditation. And also, I feel like an intention. Many of you may know that this week there is the intention to dedicate our practice to world peace. And so, we can just use this as an opportunity to really connect in with all beings. So finding your posture. And maybe taking a few deep breaths. And on the exhalation, just having the sense of letting go of anything you're carrying. And breathing in normally. And then reflecting on your motivation for practicing. Seeing how this stems from your own desire to be happy, or love, and free from suffering, compassion. Just as we want this, so to all beings. And seeing if you can form a motivation that encompasses all living beings and their happiness and freedom. And then rest in open awareness. By letting everything be as it is. Might feel like a simple presence that is undistracted. Without needing to do anything. Nothing to fabricate or get rid of. Simply be. Thing. We'll come back together now on the screen. And so coming back to this topic of the courage to love. And here with difficult people, it's often scary, fearful. Even our very ideas of can be that love will make us weak, that love will mean that people walk all over us. And yet, in truth, love, compassion are how we discover the fearlessness of our own hearts. They're how we tap into our inner wisdom, our resiliency, our capacity to draw boundaries, or our capacity to move out of harm's way, if that's the case. And this can be done with an open heart, which is what we often fail to see. You know, in my own life, I know in the times, many times when I felt like I had to say no to something, I only knew how to do it out of anger, out of reactivity. And that what I discovered is those times it was really hard for anyone to hear that no. What they heard was uh, a whinging, screaming, nattering being, you know, rather than, no, this is not okay. And yet, when I started to find that if I stood in that within the strength of my heart, when I said no, and it had the clarity of wisdom, it was much better received. And so that was, you know, I felt like there was a big journey there of learning to say no with an open heart. Um, and of course, with all of this, as I speak about it, it's to remember it is a journey that I feel like right now with what's happening in the world, I really want to stand in that fearless place within my heart. But that may contain fear at the same time, and yet it's not stopped by it. So that's a distinction that I make, we're not looking to be acting in the perfect way with the most loving words to be a nice person. What we're looking to is that full expression of our being that accepts how we are right now and aspires to bring forth these qualities of love, compassion, and wisdom. And so when going to the difficult person, the piece about interdependence for me that was just so strong happened one morning sitting down on the beach, reflecting on world situation, being enraged, being, you know, that sense of how can I ever feel any sense of love, compassion for this particular person. And at that time, I really just started reflecting on interdependence. And you know, I don't have all the exact words for what my experience was, but it was, you know, sitting where I was with the feelings I had, with the anger that was there, and also feeling the world around me, feeling that there have been so many influences that were affecting my own reactivity, that were, um, you know, that there's so many strands from the past in the present that were all coming together. And, you know, seeing that many relationships with people have influenced what I felt right now, feeling that, and what it started to do was shift into a place where this person was a part of all these influences. And they didn't feel separate anymore. It felt as if it was just a part of this whole that was unfolding. And in seeing it, how to say, it was like the personality was one aspect, their actions were one aspect. And suddenly it wasn't, it wasn't even as if I thought I need to include it because this is a part of the whole that's caught in suffering themselves, but that it was like a part of me, like when I get in a foul mood or something, and there's you know, it's like that's happening, and yet it's still a part, I still have to take care of the whole. And it was just that sense that this person is a part of the whole. And just as when I might hurt my hand, I don't cut my hand off, it made no sense to cut off from this other living being. And it was just like, it was like a no-brainer, that it was like coming into a sense of being a part of, seeing the humanity in, and it just, out of that, there's just kindness, care, respect. And how do we take care of this rather than how do we get rid of this? And it was really quite profound. And it's not that I live there. I'd love to say I live there, but no, it's not that I live there, but I sense the possibility of knowing a greater way to hold differences, to hold challenging people in my heart, and to keep, and the important part being to keep drawing these qualities of love, compassion, and wisdom into my life, into what's the visibility of what, that feels like, how to say, that's the agency we have in life. We can bring whatever qualities we want into life. And when we start to get a sense that these qualities are naturally present, it's like, how can I stay in touch with these qualities in the midst of what can be awful situations? But I feel like this is so important right now because we just live in a time where it would be easy. The alternative is we collapse, we give up, we hibernate, and that's not going to help anything. And we disappear with that, we harden in that, we suffer in that. And so, I'm reminded of Bernie Glassman. He's a Zen teacher. He lived in the United States, and he was helping the homeless people in New York. And he said, I know that I'm never going to alleviate all of the homelessness in New York, but I will die trying, and it's like I just trying to find a way to make that commitment to my own heart to not give up in this time, and to find what I can bring to this moment. So Edwin, I'd like to pass it to you and then we'll open it up.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know when it was, but it's some years ago. I was had the fortune to be present when Myoshin was teaching uh, on loving kindness, and yeah, I don't remember what the context was. How come I was? Because we often do teach our own programs. It's rare we teach together, or it was back then. But in talking about loving kindness for a difficult person, she said it's really important to distinguish the difference or separate the being from the behavior. And there was, yeah, that really, really stuck with me. And I know I have mentioned it many, many times. And another thing that Myoshin said, I don't know whether it was the same time, but she used the phrase when dealing with a difficult person, loving kindness for a difficult person, don't cast the person out of your heart, which again was really like, whoa, and it really speaks to this whole notion of loving kindness. Because if we're able to maintain the connection in our heart with a difficult person, then we've got the interconnectedness, right? The kindness in a way kind of dissolves the barriers. If we don't have the kindness, then we so easily fall into this notion of othering and blaming. It's something or somebody out there, and in order to blame, then we have to cut the connection in some way. We have to sever our heart's connection to that being. And there's something in that understanding that was really, really, yeah, it's been really critically important for me. And so, of course, it's really easy when you're out in the world and someone smiles and is nice to you to be nice back again. That's the easy part of it. But if somebody does behave in a way that's unsavory, it's very easy, to like, give them the middle finger or whatever. But just that act there, it cuts the loving kindness. And you see so much of, social media. Yeah, this othering is such a big part. And they talk about, we are so divided as a community, politically, socially, whatever. And it's largely about the othering. And it's so easy to demonize something and externalize it and then go into battle or consider them the enemy, etc. And it takes a lot of courage to dissemble that barrier in some way. So that's a big part of it. And then, of course, seeing the interconnectedness, like Myoshin talked about. And if you keep the loving kindness, there's an inquiry in loving kindness. There's an interest in loving kindness. There's an it's like, oh, you're looking for the goodness. Your mind is inclined towards noticing that which is loving and caring and compassionate and kind, the virtuous aspect of whatever the interaction is, rather than looking for the bad. So that's been really kind of powerful for me. There's, and it comes back down to the whole way that, from the tradition that we practice with Minga Rinpoche, and particularly the way he approaches the Joy of Living level 2, which is the basic teachings on loving kindness and compassion, although the interconnectedness is part of the wisdom. But as you can see, awareness, loving kindness, compassion, and wisdom, although they are three aspects, they're really the same thing that we're talking about. But this notion that we are all endowed with this inherent goodness. And that's what makes it possible to, when you look for that, rather than see the bad in others, that's where separating the being from the behavior is really important. Because you're holding the being and honoring their true nature. And the wisdom then is what's needed to, as Myoshin said, say no to the behavior, to distinguish the person from the behavior. And the wisdom draws the line in the sand and says, no, that's not acceptable. And that's why we always, we are so... when you see something that's unjust, it's the wisdom that wants to draw the line in the sand, that wants to hold people accountable for their behavior that's unacceptable. There's one thing I will just, before I shut up, one more thing. And this was something that I learned when Myoshin and I were living in central Massachusetts in the Insight Meditation Society, the Theravada tradition, and their teachings on what in the Tibetan tradition we regard as the four immeasurables, but in the Theravada tradition is referred to as the Brahma Viharas, or heavenly abodes, dwellings of these immeasurable qualities of loving kindness, compassion, appreciative joy, and equanimity. It is said of the person who cultivates loving kindness that one of the benefits or side effects of cultivating or living from the place of loving kindness is that you will have no enemies. That really struck me. You'll have no enemies if you live from a place of kindness. And so, so that, nobody else, you'll have no enemy. That's really powerful when you think about it. And it's not so much that you haven't had, you haven't clashed with others, or you haven't had disagreements with others. But if the interactions are infused with love and kindness, even though they might not agree with you, you're not creating an enemy. Yeah, cool stuff.
When it's compassion and it's not about my pain, your pain, it's like, this is suffering. What can I do about it? That's the empowerment of compassion. That's where we find the strength in our heart. So that you were able to see that in yourself was beautiful. And then, when we look, analytical meditation can be very helpful at times. It's like, you find, for me, it's like I find myself hooked into something. And just the question there, what's the hook? What am I hanging on to? But then it isn't just thinking about it. It's like being with that experience and seeing, sometimes I might see it's a belief, that if I don't get what I need, then I'm not going to be okay. It's that sense of there's some real belief that's there. Sometimes it's a reaction, that's wanting to just push away something. And, so it's like just seeing what helps you to come close to the experience where you can see it more clearly. And I found that when I'm really being present with an experience, the questions start to come themselves. That because it's really coming out of that interest, that curiosity, that openness. And so that's what's important, is being open to and interested in what's unraveling here. What's the pieces. And it's not as if to solve it, to get rid of it, because again, that's really got an agenda, but it's to really know our experience. And so I find it can be quite powerful. It needs to be done with the basis of awareness, so that we're not just, how to say, there's ways you could get caught in loops of storytelling that just kind of even ingrain it more. But with awareness, it's a very dynamic process. Yeah, so there can be awareness of the storytelling, but within that, if we're doing this inquiry, it's like there's also the question, why is this so sticky? What is it? Is there a sensation in here that I am attached to? Is there something that I really hate? So it's like it's like turning the light on a little bit brighter, in a sense, to see what's the bite, what's the hook.
I might just add, from my experience, one of the story, the sense of self in the story is, to the extent to which the sense of self is made real through the story, normally adds more, more suffering in some level. It reminds me of, I've said this before a number of occasions, teachings that I've read from Bhikkhu Bodhi, where he sort of talks about there are two ways that we make real the sense of self, and it's the identification and the appropriation. So am I owning, am I clinging in some way, or am I identified with it? So if the inquiry looks, yes, you need to look at the layers, the deeper layers, like Myoshin was talking about, but also see if there's somewhere in which my identity is really wrapped up in this. Because if it is, then there's a lot more juice. The story will be, more bothersome.
Yeah, we have difficult people, and then when we're repeatedly, after something that you've been through, to be going back, of course, it's normal that there could be a lot of feelings. And so to me, it's a case of how can you keep coming back to awareness, keep coming back to yourself, do your job, let it go, watch expectation, you've learned a lot. You're not the same person. They're not the same people. How can we remember that? Usually that's where we put ourselves in prison as if nothing has changed. And then we just fall right into reacting in the same way. And let the door to be open to change. And it may not be, and maybe it will never be the right environment or the environment that feeds you in a certain way. Who knows? Just let it be what it is without expectation. Keep coming back to yourself.
And one of the real benefits of loving kindness practice, so to cultivate loving kindness for these people, is that it softens that edge in your own mind. And so if you're walking on eggshells, other people will feel it. You're guarding yourself, you're guarding what you say, you're trying to be accepted or whatever. And people will know that, and they'll react to it in an adverse sort of way. If you cultivate a loving kindness for them, it sort of softens your behavior, your thoughts, in some way. And it's not so much that the loving kindness changed them. The loving kindness just changes your own mind. That's the really powerful aspect of the practice. And getting back to not making enemies, what I said earlier, it also makes you fearless in some level, because you're not, it mitigates the fear that you have or the caution that you have in some way. That I think then that will make a difference.
I just wanted to share a brief story around something of what Edwin is talking about. That when I first began teaching, I was really nervous of the audience, the people that were there, and that I was sure that everybody was judging me and thinking I shouldn't be there, I shouldn't be doing what I was doing. It was horrible. But very quickly it came to me to do loving kindness practice. And before I knew it, I was sitting in a room full of my friends. And it was just such a beautiful shift. And all that changed was in my own mind, but it really shifted so much. So these practices are very helpful. And just to share, I had a message from somebody who had registered for this program, and they said that they're sorry they couldn't make it. But the good news is they've been doing Tonglen all week and their difficult person had shifted. So, yeah.
It's like if you come from, if you can cultivate the kindness, kindness is like a filter that you see the world through. Or if you're coming from a place of judgment or a criticism or distancing or the story of the challenge, and particularly when it's difficult, there's such a story that says it shouldn't be like this, or this person shouldn't be like that. You shouldn't do that. The shouldn't. So you either come in. So if you've got the shouldn't filter on or the kindness filter on, it's your mind that changes the world. I mean, how Buddhist is that?
Yeah. To me, I mean, there's no magic formula, unfortunately, that we can just know that. But what we can do is listen. So it's like being in the situation, listening to your own inner responses, listening to the person. And sometimes you might see that they're not even hearing anything you say, and that to keep going down the route you're going, it is not helpful to you. It's depleting your energy and it's not benefiting them. And so if we listen, then we know these things. If we just work with, be with what's coming up in you as well as what you're perceiving from the world, and do the best you can. And then if we make a mistake and we didn't, somewhere, if we feel like we made a mistake, we learn from that. And then it's not a mistake, we learned from it. So, and hold all of that with love and compassion, and not the pressure to be perfect. Know that we're human beings doing the best we can. Yeah.
Sophie, for me, it's like the incredible thing about compassion for all beings includes yourself. So you have to have compassion. You have to take care of yourself in the process. And even the idea of taking care of yourself in the process is wisdom speaking. The Buddhist path is sort of related to as the two wings of the bird, wisdom and compassion. And there's a way in which compassion can get out of balance if it doesn't have the wisdom in it. It's really important to pull in the understanding, know where your boundaries are, know what your limits are, not give beyond your capacity and care for yourself.
Well, I realize that we are already past the top of the hour. I have to say that I really value what everybody has brought to this. And I just would like if the world could be talking about this and looking at this and not who to bomb next. But anyhow, um, yeah, so we are gonna wrap it up. And I didn't get to do the meditation on interdependence. What I will be doing is I'll record one and I'll post it. It'll appear both on YouTube and This Meditative Life. All right, so we'll just take a moment to dedicate. So it's just taking a moment to check in with body and mind, how your time here has affected you. And remembering that we came together around a good intention, however we might have languaged that. And remembering all of the beings that we share this world with, those who are known and unknown to us. And how we all want to be happy, want to be free from suffering, even though we may see it in very distorted, confused ways. Dedicating any benefit from our time here to help relieve the distress, the anxiety, the fear, the confusion, so that all beings everywhere may find peace, happiness, have the conditions to flourish. Hey. So thank you all for being here.